I can do it whenever we're ready to go. We'll do Pledge Allegiance first.
Is 17 the only TV station? 17 is.
Well, at least it's not on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance first.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started, but first we're going to go ahead and start by doing a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could stand.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Callie Wright-Smith, and I'm an associate professor of political science at Westminster College. I'd like to welcome all of you to this evening's debates for the presiding commissioner and Callaway County collector races. Thank you to Fulton Sun for hosting the debates, the City of Fulton for providing the venue, and to the candidates, Gary Youngerman, Susie Ferguson, Sarah Gladman, and Nancy Elkthunder for participating. The purpose of these bipartisan debates is threefold: to educate the public about issues in the campaigns, to provide an opportunity for voters to hear candidates discuss these issues, and to stimulate public interest and participation in the elections. Before we began, there was a coin flip to determine which candidate will go first with his or her opening statement. For each of the questions, the candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer the question, and then his or her opponent will be given 2 minutes for rebuttal. We want to thank the public for submitting questions. These questions have been collected and submitted to the moderators prior to the evening. The moderators then chose which questions to ask, and as a result, we won't be taking any questions from the audience. So we'd like to ask everyone to turn off their cell phones, and we will go ahead and begin. We're going to start tonight with 2-minute opening statements from the candidates, and Ms. Ferguson will go ahead and begin.
Stand or remain seated,
It's
whatever.
really up to you. Whatever
Okay.
you're comfortable with.
I see a few faces out there that I don't recognize. For those of you that don't know me, my family's 5 generations deep here in Callaway County. We've got in the blood, sweat, and time to say it's our home for a long time. I was born here, went to school at Mocaine, same school that Mr. Youngerman went to. Started when I was 6. They throwed me out the door when I was 17, handed me their diploma and said, good luck. So went right straight into the Hard Knock U after that. So I've worked almost exclusively and lived in Callaway County nearly all my life. Just a little short sprint away from home for a little while. I have always worked in the livestock side of agriculture, and that seems to be what I know the most about. Spent some time on the family farm, worked in a vet clinic doing large animal calls, a feed and ag supply store, so I understand a little bit about the chemicals and stuff that people talk about and what they say they can and can't do. And then I worked in a butcher shop, so that seems to be almost full circle. We start it, and then we butcher it, and then we eat it. That's where most animals are going to end up. So I do run and manage my own livestock operation. It's not a big operation. It's not a tiny operation. It encompasses about 140 acres. Got some beef cows. I have some dairy cows that are not really truly dairy cows, and a few hogs, and a pretty major supply of sheep. So that takes up most of my time. I've taken waste products twice in my life and turned them into income, and I think that's something that not everybody knows to do. My brother and I fed Jersey steers and turned it into a $50,000 a year business, and that's the waste products in the beef industry, is a Jersey steer. And then when we got into nurse cows, I turned the milk into an income, And I think that's something I can be proud of. And I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Youngerman, you have 2 minutes for opening statements.
Okay. I'm Gary Youngerman. I've been your commissioner now for a few years. I grew up on a family farm on the east side of the county, little town of Reedsville. I went to school, as Susie said, at Mocaine High School, where I met my wife of 34 years. We have 3 children, 5 grandchildren. Out of high school, I went to work. I was just a normal employee. I worked for 2 different companies, doing a lot of service technician work. In 1999, I decided to start my own company. Me and my brother went into business. We had a construction company for approximately 12 years. When I decided that I was going to run for commissioner. Loved that, loved construction, loved this job. Me and my wife mostly, she owned a cabinet shop also for about 10 years. And we're not part of either one of them anymore. She has a daycare now, and I'm a full-time commissioner, putting in a minimum of probably 50 hours a week because this job requires a lot of time because we're a rare county. We're a county that the commissioners are here every day. We almost need to be because of the staff that we cannot afford. Other counties can afford staff and they can afford not to be there. So I appreciate being your commissioner, and that's really all I have. Thank you all for putting on this debate because I think it's good for the general public to get to see us and have us talk to them.
Thank you very much. For the next question, we'll start with Ms. Ferguson. Do you think that Callaway County should work toward putting in place a recycling program for county residents?
I absolutely think we have to recycle. If not, we're going to live in a trash dump. It doesn't seem like we ever produce any less waste. It just becomes more and more. I've taken the liberty of talking to a few people. As long as a waste or a recycling facility was set up by the county and run by the county, we could utilize some community service hours in that facility. And very seldom does our recycles have no value. Nearly everything has some value. Now, will they pay for the entire system? I'm not sure, but metals have a value all the time. Cardboard has a value more or less off and on. Plastics have somewhat of a value, but we're paying to haul the trash. So surely we can figure a way to haul recyclables versus just haul trash. I'm sure that it would take up a fair amount of effort to set it up, but I don't think it's something we can avoid. I think we have to recycle. And I think the dumpsters that we used to have on the south side of town that I used to participate in filling, you always had to wait in line to take your turn to put your recycles in. They were always full. That tells me that there is a demand for the recycling and we need to do our best to bring it back.
Thank you. Commissioner Youngerman, same question.
You know, the recycling is the definite, I've been spoken to about recycling several times, and I'm still working on recycling with Region H solid waste. I think it's important, as Susie said, we're taking a lot of stuff to the landfills. The question is, how much do you want to pay to recycle? Because everything that you do, Mr. Haymart has a recycling facility right up just south of town here. Everybody you talk to, there's a charge, and sometimes it's a huge charge to recycle. But currently we're working with Solid Waste Division, Region H, looking at a potential grant. The issue there is that we can get a grant, but we have to become self-sustainable. And the grant will not pay. It'll get us some dumpsters and different things like that, some roll-offs, and finding places to put them too so that we can keep them clean, making sure that it's clean recyclables, not somebody throwing a bunch of trash in there too, because when that happens, the whole load has to go to the dump because recyclers won't take it. So there is a cost, so you have to ask yourself, at what cost do you recycle? And currently the county, with the funding mechanisms we have, you know, it would cost thousands of dollars to recycle every year. That would be the cost to the taxpayers. So trying to figure out how that system needs to work is a difficult thing, and it's not something that you just jump right into. You have to work at it and try to figure out how to do it and sustain it. So I'm a supporter of recycling. Green is good.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Youngerman, the next question will start with you. What is your position on health ordinances for Callaway County? Specifically for confined animal feeding operations.
Well, number one, yes, the county has the ability to create ordinances. My point is this. There's 114 counties in the state of Missouri. Animal agriculture, CAFOs, are one of the most highly regulated portions of agriculture there is. They're state regulated. I firmly believe that it isn't in the best interest for 114 counties to create different ordinances. There's reasons for that. One, you can't have 114 different rules, I don't believe, throughout the state. Some counties thrive on CAFOs because if they didn't have CAFOs, they wouldn't have any revenue to speak of. When you look at this as a big picture, and I think the state's going to look at this, there's been some conversation. There's a lot of conversation about CAFOs right now, and I get it. I grew up on the farm. I'm pro-agriculture, but I'm also pro what's right for the public safety. I can tell you that back when me and Susie were kids, there was 5 million hogs, over 5 million hogs in the state of Missouri. The last numbers I've seen, it's about 3.2, 3.3 million, I think, in the state of Missouri. So we're 1.5 million to 2 million less than we were before. Now they're more confined now. There's probably some things we do need to figure out. As far as the health ordinance, the state health department, there is no, our county health department has no, there's nothing that the state's giving them to enforce anything with any kind of a health issue. So there's a lot of things that I think need to be talked about, but I'm a firm believer that because the state's regulating them heavily, that the state needs to look at what we need to do and make it that way for 114 counties.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ferguson?
Well, I've talked to a lot of different people that are very passionate about that issue, and I think it is one of the hot button topics that we have of this election, actually. I have read the health ordinance for Cooper County. I've also read the one for Howard County. One of them is a lot shorter than the other one. Both of them are a lot shorter than the proposed ordinance that the committee wrote up for us to think about and study and to start with. And that's all that is a proposed ordinance that was written up by a committee here in the county. So, and then I talked to some people at DNR, because after all, they are our safety net if we had a problem. And I asked them, the question I asked that I got the most surprising answer out of, I thought they would say that if we did not have an ordinance, that they could come in quicker and do their job, that it wouldn't entangle them. And the answer I got was, no, it really doesn't make our job any harder, and it is another level of protection, and that came right from the DNR, and it makes us a little less attractive to the CAFO in the first place. And I think if we boil it all down to the emotions that are tied up in this CAFO discussion, that a lot of people are just concerned that we not become a waste dump, and there is a lot of waste involved.
Thank you very much. For the next question, we'll start with Ms. Ferguson. If new resources were available, what is one part of county government that you specifically think needs more attention?
One part of county government. I don't know how we would go about it, but it seems to me that all of our elected officials in the county will tell you that their office is a separate entity, that they have the commissioner, per se, does not have any say over the assessor or over the collector or over any other department in that courthouse. And I'm not sure that we don't need someone who has a grasp on pretty much what every office does and could maybe just be adding a little more oversight.
Okay. Commissioner Youngerman, same question.
I believe the one thing that we need to work on is and continue to work on is probably our public safety, probably in general. We are probably underserved with our sheriff's department. And a lot of that, most of that's due to funding issues. But you know, we got a sheriff's department that's running 21,000 calls a year, and they're running the officers are running everywhere in an 840 square mile county. I mean, it's a long way from Shamrock, Missouri to Old Summit or whatever. It's no easy way to get there. And so additional officers. Now, we'll say over the past several years, things happen and we've added some officers. We've all, you know, as most of you well know, the sheriff was instrumental this year in working with the schools, and we're going to have some SROs at 3 of the schools this year, which I think is a great thing, because I think more than just for safety, I think building those relationships with those kids at schools is going to be very important. So I think overall public safety, even our 911 center, we're going to have some issues there in time because of the funding mechanism we currently have. We're going to have to do something with more of a permanent funding mechanism, even maybe with the sheriff's department over time, because right now the sheriff is funded solely through general revenue, and that budget is about a little over $4 million for the sheriff's department and the jail. It's somewhat highly disappointing on one hand, though, because we're putting a lot of money, taxpayer dollars, into the criminal side of county government. So we're going to have to look at, and we're mandated to do so. So we're going to have to look at those and try to figure out how we're going to fund and build those and get. So.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Youngerman, does Callaway County need its own hospital or a different form of delivery of health services for the county?
You know, I think it's important to have a hospital here, because I think if we want businesses to come in, it's important that plus it's important for the citizens of this county to have a hospital. The hospital issue is, the hospital now is open. I know they're adding some things, that they've just added a medical side where they're doing surgeries again here. So I think for this community it is important, but I also know that small communities such as Fulton all across the country, they're struggling because emergency rooms are a killer to hospitals, because anybody can walk into an emergency room and you don't have to pay. You know, then they have to take you and they have to work on you. So I think it's important we have the hospital, but I also believe it's important that if a hospital can't function here, how do we as citizens either help that hospital, or what is our alternative to losing a hospital? But I do believe it is important to have one.
Thank you. Ms. Ferguson, the same question?
I do think the hospital is important, but I think it boils back down to our healthcare system is just totally out of control, and I think that has a lot to do with why it's struggling. People here just can't afford to go to the hospital, and they avoid it until the last minute or until there's a disaster, and then it's not a discussion, then you just go to the hospital. And like Mr. Youngerman says, I understand that if somebody goes to the hospital in the emergency room and they can't pay, they're not forced to pay. They're not put in jail if they don't pay. I think we should explore urgent care maybe, so that we don't have to just go to the emergency room. Urgent care in other counties is about half to 2/3 of what it is to go to the emergency room, and sometimes that's the difference between waiting too long and getting there when you need to. I know it takes a long time for a doctor to go to school and make a living, but it sure did seem a lot simpler here in Callaway County when we had good old Dr. Brown. He delivered all of us, and he was general practitioner and took care of us. Maybe we need to explore maybe some options where we would share doctors with some other counties, so they would spend a couple of days a week here and a couple of days somewhere else. I'm not sure. I don't think I have the answer, but I think we need the hospital.
Thank you. Ms. Ferguson, when looking at the work of the County Commission itself, what changes do you believe could improve the work of the county commissioners to improve delivery of services overall?
Well, when I went in and signed up, I asked for a job description, and it was such a vague job description that it could have covered anything from the janitor to I don't know. I couldn't believe it. There was basically nothing on the job description. And I've done a little digging, and I've had people that do that way better than I do working on it, and there's not much of a job description. You're just kind of an overseer for the county. You're the public face for the county, and like Gary says, I'm sure there's a lot of hours there that go into it that really aren't clocked. It says 26 to 32 hour position in the one job description that I found something on. I think we need to work on our transparency and getting the knowledge out to the public of what we are actually working on in the commissioner's office. I spoke to Ms. Jenny at the paper and asked her if there was a possibility, could we have something to the effect of the Commissioner's Corner a couple of times a month, where it's actually out there in the paper what projects we're working on, what problems we're dealing with, what did we think we had taken care of that has come back to be a dragon that really didn't get taken care of, and it's going to take up a lot of time again. And it would just be a way for the people to kind of keep up with what we're doing. And I think our people want to know what's going on. I know the door is open to the courthouse, but if people don't have time to go, it doesn't matter.
And Commissioner Youngerman, I have a similar final question for you, which is, how do you think you can work to ensure that there is greater transparency and accountability built into the work of the county commission itself?
Well, this past week, everyone knows, so there's some, we're working on some things. But the one thing I'm going to say is we've done some major things already for that, and we're going to continue to work on some policies and things. But you have to have the relationships with the other county elects to make some of them policies work, because as a commission, we oversee their budget, but we do not oversee their office. So all we can do is provide them with stuff to make things as good as they can be, and then they have to kind of do that within their office to make sure that it works. I want to say that Susie's right. We used to do a Commissioner's Corner when I first was here with the Fulton Sun. 4 years ago, they decided to stop that. And now there's new people there. But we were doing it along with the mayor of this town. We were each taking a week, 3 commissioners and a mayor. We was filling up the month with a Commissioner's Corner, and that stopped. I am still currently writing an article in the New Bloomfield News Blaster trying to keep people up to date. Our minutes are online with the clerk's office, and our office is open all the time, and I know everyone's busy, and the courthouse closes at 5. But I'm open, and if people want to talk to me, I will tell them what's going on. We keep everything pretty much up front. I mean, we're doing some things right now with we're doing a feasibility study, because we're going to have some space issues here soon with our sheriff's department already, our jail. We're getting more and more people. I mean, because of Interstate 70 and 54, we're really we're filling up our jail, which is only 30 years old, but we have a lot of criminals in there every day. So we've got some work to do. We know that. We're trying to be as upfront as we can, and I would love to do articles and things, and I try to do that some.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you both for your answers to these questions. We will now conclude with closing statements. So we will allow for 1 minute each for closing statements from each candidate, and we'll begin with Commissioner Youngerman.
Well, I just want to thank you guys again for what you've done. I think what I want to say is I've enjoyed being the commissioner. I think that we've done some really good work. I think there's more work that definitely needs done. I do believe that my heart is in this, and your heart has to be in this job because you're a public servant. You're trying to provide. The issue comes is when you got all these things that you're mandated to do, and there's not enough money there to do it sometimes. We're thankful for the money we have, and we chase every federal dollar we can to try to make things work. All the elected officials do, and the elected officials, I think, are very good with their budgets. So, I would hope that people would still support me. There's still some things to do. I know that there's some things that they don't agree, sometimes with the CAFO stuff even, but I'm not unworkable. I'm ready to work and try to figure this out.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ferguson.
Anytime you have an office that's elected, that office should be accountable to the voters. And we need to, as voters, to hold that person accountable. After all, we are their boss. But if we don't take the effort, that's partly our fault too. I'm not a career politician, and I think that that a new set of eyes to the commissioner's office might be a good thing to have. I don't aspire to be the greatest commissioner we've ever had. I don't aspire to be the longest commissioner we've ever had. Just here long enough to help reinstate the trust, figure out what we need to do.
Thank you very much. That will conclude our first debate, and I want to thank both of our candidates for participating in this evening's debate and also to you all for attending. So please give them a round of applause. We are going to go ahead and take about a 5-minute break or so in between in between the two debates. So we'll come back and reconvene in a few minutes. So if anyone needs to step out, and we'll come back for the next debate. So he actually works for the college as well. So he works, he is one of our computer programmers in our IT department. Yeah, so we're in the same building every day. It's really useful. Yeah.
12 years ago.
Yeah. So,
Well,
sure.
they did take all their time.
Oh, I know. That was really
It's
easy. We
already-
didn't have to cut them out.
already
I know,
20.
7:25. We got about 5 minutes to spare out of it.
wanna
So,
run to the restroom?
yeah. It was nice to meet you as well. Yeah.
The party's coming up, isn't it? At the
Yep.
winery?
Next Thursday?
Sometimes I space out. I hope I don't. Hopefully I'll get a message.
Well, I only know because we're having the Missouri General Assembly debates on campus that night. And it ended up
Oh, is
being
it
the
the
same.
same?
It's the
I
same
didn't know.
night.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So Tobias was saying now he's going to have to moderate those debates because there's a lot of people from college, the campus, that are going there. So, yeah, I will.
Yeah, might as well. I'm gonna go to the restroom. I'll be back.
You know John Lang,
I do. He was my professor, and now
Kicking
my
the bug for
coworker.
me.
Oh, that's easy.
ask him to tell you the hot dog joke.
Okay.
It's a story about him.
Okay.
Little this about
What's your name?
Ike Remish. Let's say
Okay.
the hot dog. What's this about you and a hot dog?
I will.
He'll know.
I'll throw it to him.
I know. He's like ready and I know, I was kind of surprised. I've been surprised by a few things tonight. Like the impressiveness of this room and like the digs are really nice. I don't know, I just wasn't expecting that. And I was just like, wow, there's like nice chairs and the whole thing. Like I know, yeah. Okay.
Son, will you get my phone out of my purse there? Keep an eye on the time.
This one, the Lutkemeyer and Gebert. Yes.
We're going to get started here in about a minute.
This is off.
We're going to get started here in about a minute.
It's not on. Oh, now it is. Now it is, yeah. Ready, timekeeper?
Yes.
A new moderator?
That's right. We switch out. It's exhausting work. Yeah. I do, yeah. Oh, wow.
He's our senior.
He is, right.
If everyone would take their seats, please. I think we're going to start with the second debate this evening.
I'm sorry I was late.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, thank you all for joining us this evening, and for those of you who have remained with us as we present our second debate on our schedule. This is the debate between the two candidates for the county collector. My name is Kate Perry, and I am an adjunct instructor of political science at Westminster College. We will be hearing from our two candidates, Mrs. Sarah Gladman and Mrs. Nancy Elk Thunder. Thank you for joining us tonight, candidates, and thank you to all the organizers of this event. I want to remind the audience to silence all cell phones before we begin, and we will follow in the same pattern and fashion as the previous debate. So now we will hear opening statements from each candidate, and we will begin with Mrs. Nancy Elk Thunder.
Callaway County, 1980 graduate of Fulton High School. I am not a politician, so let's get that out right now. My journey here started Easter Sunday when we were sitting around the dinner table solving the world's problems, and my sister turned to me when we started talking about the collector's position and what might be going on and said, "Nancy, you ought to run for that position." I got to thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, why don't I run? So that Monday, I called the clerk's office and to find out about how I go about running, and she said, well, the deadline was Friday to file. So she said, but however, you can get on the November ballot as an independent candidate if you collect so many signatures. So with the help of my husband, my best friend, and my dad, I was able to turn in more signatures than required because they had to be valid. And she informed me that yes, I had the number required to get on the ballot as an independent candidate, and here I am. So that's my story and how I got here.
Mrs. Gladman, go right ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name's Sarah Gladman. I'm running for Callaway County Collector. I've worked in the collector's office for 19 years and have been the chief deputy collector for 13 years. I graduated from North Callaway High School, and I reside in Fulton with my husband and my 3 children. I started campaigning back in 2016 as I knew the collector's position would be open in 2019. I was so excited the day had finally come to file. After filing, I knocked on doors, attended meetings, walked in parades, handed out signs, and worked the Republican booths at festivals, and cut up mutton and served mutton. I mean, everything you could imagine. And then I ended up winning the primary in August. So then March 15th happened. I was just as shocked and heartbroken to hear that the collector was resigning, as I'd worked with her for 19 years. The next thing I knew, I was assisting the FBI and the state auditors in an investigation, and I want to make it clear that myself and no one else in the office was ever being investigated. For the next 6 months, we all assisted in finalizing the investigation, and that's pretty much what the office has been doing for the last 6 months. I've always had such pride and love for my job and the collector's office. Even with everything that's happened in the last 6 months, I still want to be the collector and still take pride in what I do. That's it.
Thank you. We will now turn to the questions that we received from the public. So each of you spoke about this a little bit in your opening statements, but starting with you, Mrs. Elk Thunder, can you tell us what specifically motivated you to run for this position?
I knew there was a problem in the office. The Callaway collector had resigned. There was questionable activity. I knew I had an option. I could either sit back and let somebody else worry with it, or I could step forward and be actively involved. And I decided I wanted to be actively involved in the change.
Thank you. Mrs. Gladman, you were
Can you
about.
repeat the question again?
Yeah, sure. So you talked a little bit about this in your opening statement, but what are some of the specific things that motivated you to run for county collector?
Working there for 19 years. I started there in 1999, so I was only 20 years old when I started there, and it is what I know. I know the job, I know the duties, I know the responsibilities, and I don't know anything else. So that's why I wanted to run.
Thank you. Okay, starting with you again, Mrs. Gladman. What are the specific qualifications required for the county collector, and what makes you the most qualified candidate?
The specifics are you have to be a U.S. citizen, a resident of the state 1 year prior to election, a registered Missouri voter, you can't owe any delinquent taxes, you can't be found guilty or plead guilty to a felony. You have to be 21 years of age, a resident of the county, and then the biggest thing is have a signed affidavit from a surety company saying you can be bonded for $750,000. My qualifications are just working there every day for 19 years, 5 days a week. I live it, breathe it every Monday through Friday. That's how I'm qualified. I've been attending the Missouri County Collectors Association meetings in Jeff City ever since I've been the chief deputy, which has been 13 years. And then 12 years I've attended the collectors legislative meetings in Jefferson City. And just having knowledge of the office and experience is what I know. So that's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Elk Thunder?
Sarah graciously covered the job requirements, so thank you.
Helpful.
So my personal qualifications is currently I manage a business account, which requires me to collect and record fees that are paid, pay bills on time, things along that nature, make sure the checking account balances. I've had over 15 years of researching state statutes and federal and state regulations to ensure regulatory compliance. I've been in charge of developing a departmental budget, which is actually two budgets. You have your personnel budget for salaries, overtime, things like that. And then you have your operational budget for daily supplies, equipment maintenance, equipment upgrades, things along that line. And the knowledge that the two don't mix. You cannot dip into one fund to pay something out of the other fund. I also have many years of balancing a cash drawer. My first experience in balancing a cash drawer was my senior year in high school, working at Kmart. Does anybody remember Kmart? And that's when I also learned that one person per till, so you can be accountable for the cash in your drawer and what you receive and what's paid out. Title of Callaway Collector, I believe my experience qualifies me for the position.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with you again, Mrs. Elk Thunder. What are your top 3 priorities if you're elected to this position?
My top 3 priorities is to make sure I'm a strong leader, that I'm willing to hold the team up when we succeed, because although no matter who's doing the project, somebody else is they're picking up the slack that that's caused. So success is a team effort. But then again, when things go south, I need to be able to step up and say, I'm sorry, it was my fault. No matter who was responsible for the project, as a collector, it's my duty to make sure it's done correctly. My second one is to make sure policies are followed. I think maybe things have gotten a little lax in the department over the past few years. We need to make sure there's a good foundation on which to build change. My third one would be that I've been saying all along about checks and balances. We need to make sure that the recommendations of the state auditor are followed. I think she has done a great job in pointing out those checks and balances that need to now occur, and so just enforcing that they are.
Thank you. Mrs. Gladman?
My biggest priority, I think, is to make a smooth transition from the previous collector to the new collector. I think that's huge. I have the knowledge and experience to do that. The county is getting a new software program in March of next year, so that'll be huge. I think it's huge for the office, and it will help with balancing the books from the collector's office versus the assessor's office and having everything run smooth together. So that would be my second one. My third one is segregating duties, having everyone in the office knowing all facets of the job, everything from balancing bank statements to doing the drawer every day. So those three things are huge, I think.
Great, thank you. All right, Mrs. Gladman, we'll start with this question with you. Given the recent legal issues surrounding the preceding collector, what specific checks and balances are you planning to try to put into place to avoid future issues with the handling of taxpayer money?
I think the biggest thing is having more than one set of eyes on an account all the time, because there was one account that no one was aware of. So I think that's huge, and obviously everyone's aware of all of our accounts now, so that's good. Yeah, I feel like that's the biggest thing. And then I already forgot the question. What was the question?
Did you want to hear it again?
Yes.
Yeah. What specific checks and balances will you put in place to avoid future issues?
2 signatures on all accounts is big too, obviously, and that ran together with only having one set of eyes on an account and then one set of eyes on all bank accounts. I think that's, obviously we need more than that, and the auditors, of course, will be helping us with that throughout, because we have hired auditors and then we have our county auditor. That's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Elk-Thunder?
The biggest one is a hard question. There's a lot of changes that need to be made. I'm not sure which is the biggest. As Ms. Gladman said, yeah, we need 2 signatures on all the accounts. Everything she said I agree with. We need to make sure that the collector's office isn't being used as people's personal banking accounts, as it appears it has been. There's just a lot to go through that is outlined in the state auditor's report. I really do believe that the biggest one, though, is making sure there's more than one set of eyes reviewing everything.
Great, thank you. Each candidate will now answer a question specifically addressed to them and be allowed 2 minutes to answer. No rebuttal will be given by the opposing candidate. Starting with you, Mrs. Sarah Gladman. Your experience working in the collector's office has provided you with a strong background into the duties of this job, but it has also connected you and your coworkers to the financial abuse committed by a single employee. What would you like the citizens of Callaway County to know about what this set of circumstances has taught you about government transparency and accountability?
It's very unfortunate that all of us have paid dearly for what someone else did. I think that's terrible, and working there so long, I mean, I was just as shocked and heartbroken as anyone. And I think that, obviously nobody saw it coming. I didn't see it coming. I was sitting right next to her the entire time, every day, all day long. So that, just was very, very difficult. I hope that in the future that just running the office, I can rebuild the trust, and obviously there's going to be 1,000 eyes on everything in that office at all times now, because we all know what to look for and what to watch for, and then, you know, other offices have learned of duties that they need to be doing that they weren't doing before, either because they weren't aware or just our system wasn't capable of giving them things that they wanted, like report-wise, and that's why we're getting a new computer system, so nothing can happen with that. Everyone will have their own sign-on and their own cash drawer, I mean, everything. So I feel like we're already working towards making everything better, and hopefully nothing like this will ever happen again with any of the employees or anywhere in the county, for that matter, so.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Elk Thunder, trust in government institutions is particularly fragile following an abuse of power from a government employee. Please tell us what you can do to restore trust between the collector's office and the citizens of Callaway County.
Honesty. We've got to be honest. If you have questions, you ask, you call, you ask, you follow up, you ask other people. The best we can do is be honest with you. Open the doors, say, come on in, let's talk. If you have a question, I'll answer it. If you question it, go to somebody else. If you don't like my answer, let's discuss it. We can't be everything to everybody, but we can be the best that we are. So I think the main thing is just being honest, open, and hopefully with communication we can build that trust back.
Great, thank you. Each candidate will now be given 1 minute to give a closing statement. We will go in the opposite order of the opening statements, beginning with Mrs. Gladman.
I hope with everything I've said tonight that you'll consider casting your vote for me and trusting me and what I can do for Callaway County and what I've been doing for 19 years. My service and dedication is amazing since I've been there so long. I have the experience and knowledge to get the county moving in the right direction for earning the taxpayers' trust again. 5 days a week for 19 years. I hope it shows how much the office means to me and how much I appreciate it and love what I do every day. And I appreciate everyone being here tonight to listen to what I have to say, and thank you for considering me.
Thank you. Mrs. Elk Thunder?
If you haven't already read the state auditor's report, I strongly encourage you to do that. It goes into great detail not only about what happened with the county collector, but also things that are going on within the office. Some of the things were surprising to me that happened in the office, and as a taxpayer, to be honest, some of them made me very angry. So take a look at that, and it made me decide more than ever we needed change. Therefore, I really hope that you vote for me on November 6th for county collector. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our candidates for appearing tonight and for everyone for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. There are refreshments in the hall.
Darren with the city says that he will get this debate on YouTube hopefully tomorrow. So it'll be available on YouTube.
Great.